Awesome. Hey everyone, I'm Emily Weiner. I'm the Capital Campaign Organizer with South Philly Food Co-op. We're here tonight doing a bit of a training reboot for all of us who might be tabling or have ever tabled or have an interest in tabling for the South Philly Food Co-op in the community. So I'd like to just start by sharing our overall intent for this 25 to 30 minute power half an hour of training. We're going to do a few key things. We're going to be grounding ourselves a bit more in who we are and our mission as a co-op. We're going to learn or relearn for some of us the process of tabling at a community event, everything from the preparation through to follow-up. We'll learn or again relearn for some of us how to talk to various community stakeholders about the co-op. And we will aim to understand how to be inclusive during the outreach and engagement process. And finally, we'll take a peek to understand where key resources are or people you can turn to for help and support, especially for our newer volunteers out there. So I want to start by even zooming back and saying what the heck is tabling. When I say this word tabling, what I mean are, when we as a co-op, representatives of our co-op, go to things like community events, whether they are fairs, whether they're farmers markets. I'm gonna share my screen for a moment and give you a glimpse of what it tends to look like, what tabling actually really tends to look like. It looks a little bit like this. So if you see here on my screen, it looks a little bit like a co-op volunteer chatting with someone in the neighborhood. So when I talk for the rest of this training about our tablers and our passersby, this is who I'm talking about. Tabler, person in hat right here, passersby, this person. Awesome. I'm gonna end the share now. And the purpose of why we do this, why we table in the world, in the community, why we set up shop to talk to people about us, is really twofold. One is, in fact, to widen our community of member owners, of supporters, of partners. Certainly, we'd love folks to join our co-op, be a part of us in some way. And two, quite critically, is to ensure that the South Philly Food Co-op maintains a positive and welcoming reputation in the neighborhood. So I think a common misconception is that tabling is only or exclusively about selling member ownership. And while certainly we would love for folks to join, ultimately tabling is a way for us to build relationships. It is incredibly rare that we are going to be at a tabling event and we'll meet someone passing by and for the first time ever have an interaction with them and have them join on the spot. It does happen, but it doesn't happen often. Often people are joining the co-op as member owners or as partners once they've had one or two or more touch points with us. So it's really important for us to remember that we don't need to feel like we are in a high sales mode, and really are more in the mode of relationship building. And education, to educate people about what the heck is a co-op, what's the South Philly Food Co-op's mission, what are they all about? And so that's what we're gonna pivot into right now. So before we dig into the process for us at the South Philly Food Co-op, how we prep, how we engage, how we follow up, I'm gonna really backtrack and just ground ourselves in what is a co-op? How do we talk about what co-ops are? How do we talk about who we are as the South Philly Food Co-op? And I'll just give a heads up at this point, especially for folks watching the recording. The rest of this training will likely be pretty much 20 minutes of me talking and scrolling through and showing you some resources. If you have questions, you're always able to reach me at emily@southphillyfoodcoop.org. But just for what to expect, it'll be me giving you the rundown in different areas for the rest of our time. All right? So we're going to dive on in. I'm going to share my screen again and show you all one of my favorite resources for, what is a co-op, which is the ICA website. ICA is the International Cooperative Alliance. They have a definition on their site of a cooperative in general, any kind of cooperative business. And they say cooperatives are people-centered enterprises owned and run by and for their members to realize their common dreams. Profits generated are either reinvested in the enterprise or returned to the members. This is true for co-ops of all kinds. Some of us might be familiar with worker cooperatives. That's where a business would actually have its employees be owners of the business and involved in the governance of the business. Housing co-ops, another common form. We are a consumer co-op, which means that it is our consumers of our business, the to-be shoppers at the South Philly Food Co-op storefront, who are actually the owners of the business. That's what type of co-op we are. There's lots out there, but this is a really common across-the-board definition. And co-ops are also around the world tend to follow 7 key principles, which ICA also has on their website. Again, I invite you to check it out, ica.coop. It's a fantastic resource. And they outline right here on their site the 7 key principles that co-ops across the world tend to follow in how they're governed, how they're structured, what their purpose is in at least some way. And those are as follows. Number 1, voluntary and open membership. People don't have to be members of a co-op, they choose it. 2, democratic member control. This is about every member getting 1 vote. 3, member economic participation. Certainly we at the South Philly Food Co-op have an equity structure where member owners can invest an equity share in our business. That follows this principle. 4, autonomy and independence. This means, we are autonomous, we help ourselves, we're controlled by us, the member owners. 5, education, training, and information. Again, our sort of commitment and our practice of doing, frankly, what we're doing right now, providing education and training about what co-ops are all about, how we work, and the general public too, right? What we as tablers will be doing in the world. That's 5. 6 is cooperation among cooperatives. This is one of my personal favorite cooperative principles. We at the South Philly Food Co-op have gained tremendously from this principle with our relationships with other co-ops in the area that have been phenomenally helpful and supportive partners, and we aim to do the same in turn. And the last one is concern for community. As it says here on ICA's website, cooperatives work for the sustainable development of their communities through policies approved by their members, us, member owners of the South Philly Food Co-op. So that's a bit very broad strokes about cooperative business, right? Just to contextually understand how we fit into that. We certainly follow all of these principles, and we aim to do so in a deeper and deeper way every day. And so for us, more specifically, in terms of who we are, I invite you, now and always to visit our website if you ever need a moment, if you're prepping for a tabling event, to re-ground yourself in our language about who we are, our cooperative practice. Our mission can be found right here on the southphillyfoodcoop.org/whoweare page. This is the tab right here. Our mission is using food as a force for good at our tables, in our community, and for our planet. Again, this page goes a little deeper into language of what we're aiming to do, to be a community-owned grocery store, right? To follow that cooperative model where we're investing locally ourselves in our community, in our business, and where the benefit of the business comes right back to us and our community. So this goes deeper into that. And at the bottom of this page, if you ever want a quick reference, a couple of years ago, we had some volunteer co-op leaders craft these really beautiful belief statements, these 7 belief statements here at the bottom that are really, sort of core values about by and from and for the South Philly Food Co-op community. So I invite you to check those out always. The next thing I'm going to point you to, just as a quick scan for now, and you will have this at your digital fingertips whenever you want it. We'll send it out after this training, or for those of you who are watching the recording, you likely already have it. And that is our talking points document. So it'll live inside of a folder called the Tabling Toolkit, which all of our volunteers will have access to. And this talking points document offers largely some sort of, FAQ type questions, some that we were just talking about, what's a co-op, but also things more specific that we get very commonly Hi, Lindsay. Thanks for joining.
Sorry I'm late.
Not a worry. We're deep in, so just come on with us. Yeah, so in this talking points document, it offers you as tablers, us as volunteers, some language to potentially use when we answer common questions that we've gotten a lot over the years at tabling events. You know, what's a co-op? Wait, are you going to be like Whole Foods? When are you going to be open? That's a big one. I will note and shout that out in the talking points document that we want to be mindful about not over-promising. The most accurate answer to when we'll be open is about 4 months after we've closed our fundraising gap. So this document, again, offers just some more basic language, ways you can answer common questions, and that'll be at your fingertips. Okay, so at this point, I am going to pivot us a little bit and ground really specifically in South Philly Food Co-op tabling practices. So you heard a bit high level, what is a co-op, how do cooperatives work, what is the South Philly Food Co-op, and now we'll go deep into what we do when we are in public at a community event setting up. Actually, you know what, I stopped sharing too soon. I'm gonna share one more time again. So one thing that, again, you'll have at your digital fingertips is this flow chart on the screen here that really summarizes like a quick snapshot in terms of how we engage people based on their current relationship to us. So we'll dig into what this that I'm pointing to on the screen looks like in a second, but after we have some sort of initial engagement with someone, right, from that photo I shared with you with our co-op volunteer in their hat talking to a passerby, after we have some sort of initial engagement with someone to start a conversation, we're going to want to quickly understand if they are a member owner or not. If they're not a member owner, very common, but they're seemingly interested, we're having a fun conversation, the primary ask we'd like to make of them is indeed to join the co-op on the spot. You'll have member applications and instructions on how to accept payment in the outreach binder, which we will go through in a little bit. Now, what I said earlier stands true, right? Like folks who might be meeting us for the first or second or maybe even third time might not be ready to join yet to make that choice, and that's okay too. Ask them to join, and if it's still a no but a friendly conversation, no problem. Your secondary ask is right here in green, which is to ask them to get engaged and sign up to learn more. We have what we call supporter interest cards. Those are for people who are not member owners but do want to get engaged. You can invite them to fill one out so that they can stay on our list, stay in the know. And there's also some other materials as referenced here that are in the outreach binder that you could always share with that person. If they're not a member owner, but they don't seem totally interested, that's okay too. You might as well try to ask them right here. Your primary ask is, again, to stay in the loop and learn more. If they want to fill out one of those supporter interest cards, they might say no, and that's okay. You might as well ask. If they are a member owner, that's going to take you down here to this part of the flow chart. If they are a member owner and you're talking with them about what we're up to at the co-op, and they seem really enthusiastic, you want to ask them to get more engaged, potentially by volunteering, by doing what you're doing, standing there talking to them, or to potentially invest through our member loan program. And yet again, in our outreach binder, we'll go through the list of materials, but you'll have those like member engagement cards for people who are member owners who might want to get more involved. And if they are a member owner and they're maybe in the grumpier category, they're not that stoked to talk to you for whatever reason, number one, know that it's not you. But number two, with a smile on our face, we can all just say, you know, make no ask of them and just share some enthusiastic updates, invite them to events, whatever we wish. But I'm going to go back to how we actually get people talking to us over here, this like left side of the flow chart, right? Because if I'm just standing at a table and someone walks by, I have no idea if they're a member owner or not, and I have no idea if they're interested, enthusiastic, grumpy, or anything. So we're going to spend a little time talking about this. How do you actually engage people? So at this point, I really am going to stop my share again and show you a new, very exciting piece of material that we have. grab it here, which is our little outreach spin wheel game. I have yet to come up with a creative name for it. But what this wheel is, you would have this on your table as you are volunteering. You would have this on your table, and as you can imagine, when people are walking by, they might wonder what it is, just as I wondered what it was when the volunteer who made it gave it to me. Which is a great way to hook them, hook that person passing by and say, hey, would you like to spin the wheel and answer a question about our co-op, right? And so then they'll spin the wheel, da-di-da-di-da, and you'll land on some sort of question, and you likely can't see it so deeply on your screen, but each question correlates to, each symbol here correlates to a particular question that, again, will live inside of the outreach binder. So you'll always have it at your fingertips when they land on a spot to be able to read the question and have access to the answer. So you can ask that person who just spun the wheel, how many businesses are in our Shop South Philly program? They might, number one, not even know what the Shop South Philly program is. You can tell them it's a program through which our member owners get discounts at local businesses. And then you can answer the question. It's a fun conversation starter, and it allows you to more comfortably get to that place where you can learn if they're a member owner or not, and then follow the rest of that flow chart. So that's one big engagement tactic that you have to sort of initiate conversation. The other one, I keep going off screen. If you'll, each outreach kit will now have like a chalkboard and a thing of chalk. So you see here, today is September 17th, 2018. So I wrote that we have a hackathon on September 27th. So something like this is great to, if you have room on the table. Sometimes when we're at events, we have larger tables. Sometimes we have smaller ones. So this might not always fit. And if it doesn't, that's okay. Prioritize the wheel. But if it does, feel free to stick this on, because sometimes people might just like come up and read it and then have a question for you, which makes your sort of startup conversation process a little bit easier. And you could also always write, the prices of merchandise that we're selling, something like that on here if you don't know what the upcoming events are. Anything that's like information that people might stop by to try to read. Does that make sense? Cool. So, I mentioned that there's this magical outreach binder. I'm going to show it to you a little bit right now. I'm not going to spend tremendous time on this because everything, again, will be at your fingertips digitally. But I'd like to just highlight a few key things and areas of this binder. So anytime we are tabling at an event, we will have, we as volunteers will have this outreach binder with you. In the front, it offers an updated member map, which is just fun to be able to tell people we have 957 member owners as of this date, and they live about here. But inside, there's 4 key tabs. The first one is member owner applications. We have a member owner application for people who are paying $200 in full for equity, and one version for folks who are joining through the Community Equity Fund, where they can get part of their member equity subsidized through a fund. The next section is for engagement in here. That's the title. We have, again, some of these materials like the new supporter cards, the member engagement cards, the question and answers, the questions and answers for the wheel, as well as just for us all as reminders. There's a copy of that flow chart that I just showed to you all digitally. That will always live in this binder as well. And then there's the materials tab. The materials tab has these little rack cards. This is probably one of our most common materials. It's our Join Us on Juniper rack card for folks who are interested in member ownership. This is a wonderful material to give them and leave out on the table. And for member owners that you're talking to, if they are interested in getting more engaged, we also have a one-pager about our capital campaign and our member loan program specifically. And we have a flyer about our Community Equity Fund. Again, just highlighting quick things. You'll have all this at your fingertips. Quite critically, the last tab is finance. which inside of that lives two key things. One is a funds collected form. So every single time you accept payment of any kind, whether it's cash, whether it's via Square, which is a credit card reader that I will show you really quickly. You've likely seen it around in the world. This is the Square. You can stick it into the headphone jack in your phone, and there's instructions in the binder on how to log in. But whether you're accepting payment via Square, via cash, via check, everything gets written down on that funds collected form. And the other thing that lives in that finance tab are instructions. There's some picture instructions around how to set someone up on an automated payment plan for their member equity. So for folks who are maybe joining at the $25 a month times 8 months plan, you'll be able to have instructions around how to do that via Square. The final thing that lives in the binder is in the very back, the back pocket are just instructions. Again, simple instructions, things like here's what definitely needs to live on the table, like physically on the table when you are setting up materials. Here are the definites that need to be there, versus some things might be in the binder and you can have them at the ready if people are, wanting them. It goes through like how much does your swag cost, how specifically to collect and track payment. I know I mentioned it, but the instructions are in here. In addition to how to follow up. So one of the key things that I want to emphasize in our tabling process is that the tabling itself is a really important moment, as I said earlier, to give folks a positive experience with us, provide some education, have a warm conversation, but the follow-up is really, really key. So there are instructions in there in terms of who exactly you send what to, right? There's where you send any new member applications that were filled out, where you send that funds collected form. There are very specific instructions about members of our co-op leadership that you'll need to be in touch with very shortly after the event, like our treasurer, our member services manager, myself, key folks. If you see a question that comes in of, is there a Square that connects to phones without a headphone jack? I actually even have a phone that doesn't have a headphone jack, and you do need to have an adapter. However, there's also ways to just even log into Square as an app where you wouldn't be able to swipe someone's card automatically, but you could type in their credit card number or have that person type in their credit card number. So you can always use the Square app whether or not you have that little reader that I showed you. Great. So the final thing I'm going to point us to that's really critical, again, this is such a high-level, rapid-fire overview, so I'm really just pointing you in the direction of where you will find things when you get going. But the final thing I want to show you is really important, and it's what we call our core guidelines for when we are tabling. So these are a list of guidelines that all of us as volunteers, as representatives of the co-op, should follow when we are engaging in the world through this tabling context. And it can be found inside this tabling toolkit that will be shared with everyone. It's quite obviously titled the Core Guidelines document. And in here, I'm going to highlight just a few of these. Well, I think I'll read all of them and highlight a couple of them. We want to ask one question at a time when we're talking to folks. Rambling a lot of questions is quick to overwhelm folks. Be curious about who you're talking to. Again, let's remind ourselves it's not only about selling or wanting to get people to join as member owners or buy things. We want to learn about them. It makes for a positive experience. I like to say invite people to self-declare if they'd like to learn more. Sometimes we as experts or volunteers, the folks who know a lot about our co-op and what we're up to, will share a lot of info, but offering a moment to say, can I tell you a little bit about who we are, gives that person an opportunity to say yes, which is a more inviting way to enter the next phase of conversation. Don't be shy, try is another core guideline. People will say no, that's fine. You might as well try. It's never personal. This one is very, very key. Avoid making assumptions about whether or not someone would be interested in joining the co-op. We ask everyone equally. If we are at a tabling event and we notice ourselves perhaps initiating conversations with people of certain demographic groups more than others, assuming that certain people might be more likely to join than others. Just let's take a moment to recalibrate and ensure that we're engaging with everyone equitably. And similarly, we want to talk about member ownership and the $200 cost the same way for everyone. So we can share with everyone, hey, you know, our equity investment for member ownership is $200. And we have a program through which people who can't afford $200 can join with an investment that's meaningful to them and have the rest subsidized. We share that with everyone, no matter what we assume their financial position to be. Avoid information overload. Ensure that what you're sharing is actually aligned to what someone wants to know. Not everyone needs every tiny little detail about every event we've ever run or every single piece of our construction project. Be clear about what you know and what you don't know. It is better to actually follow up or make a note to someone else like myself to follow up with a passerby, someone you talk to, with accurate information than to give someone false promises. That harms our organization in the long run. Practice gratitude. Thank people for the time that they spent talking to you. If they come by and they spin the wheel and they fill out a supporter card and you had a nice chat for a handful of minutes, thank them. It's a great practice. And finally, if you're at an environment like a farmer's market, like a community event where there are other vendors, which there likely would be, especially if you're with one other volunteer, just take a moment to maybe meet at least a few of the other vendors. Share a little about yourself, but also ask them who they are, so that when folks come to our table at the co-op, we can also say, hey, that farmer looks like they've got some great peaches. Check them out. They look delicious. It helps create a really warm experience for everyone and ensures that we're being a good partner. So, whew, what a whirlwind. I know this was a lot. I'm going to end the share right now. I know this was a lot. It was a rapid fire overview. Hopefully it gave you at least some grounding in where to find what. Again, that key folder, the tabling toolkit folder, will be shared with everyone. The tabling toolkit folder also contains our sort of start to finish process and outlines the responsibility of the outreach committee chair or co-chairs to set us, the volunteers, up for success pre-event and post-event, which is all to say you will be taken care of. This was meant as like a high level, let's ground ourselves in who are we, what are we meant to do, what is tabling for, and to start pointing you in the right direction. But know that you will have it, and know that I am so grateful that you are choosing to volunteer with the South Philly Food Co-op and help us build this community-owned store. So thank you so much for your time.